what we want to discuss here with this second point is what would Utah's record be after a conference only schedule? So originally, the Pac-12 said, okay, no out of conference games. We're doing a Pac-12 schedule. We all got hyped for that. We're going to see Utah play each of the Pac-12 teams. Sammy, let's go through what the schedule was set to be before the cancellation of the season and the postponement to spring. Let's talk about how we would have expected these games to go.
Totally. So Utah was supposed to open up the season at Washington State. We all know Washington State, new head coach, new coaching staff. You don't really know what's going to come out of Pullman right now. I had this game as a win. I don't think it's the air raid offense that Leach ran. Gunnar Cruz is probably the most the sturdiest quarterback that they have on roster. Honestly, we know him. He's from Utah. I just think Utah is able to pull out the win. I don't know if it's lack of chemistry issues between the new coaching staff and the student athletes, what's going on. I just think Utah goes into Pullman and starts the season off with a win.
I agree with you, Sammy. When I was thinking about these games, it's interesting because, normally you would have to think, okay, is this a home game or an away game? And that either gives you a little bit of extra oomph if you're playing in front of the muss, or it might give you a little bit of a disadvantage if you're playing against, at somebody else's home in front of their home fans. But this game would have been played in front of no fans, to my understanding. But I still think Utah would come out with a W, a close one, somewhere in the range, maybe 21-17, 21-14, something like that. Just because it's early in the season, there's so many new dynamics coming into this Utah football roster, and so that to me would be a W, but it would be a close one.
Yeah, I think that just seeing how the young Utah defense would react to the situation that they were in. I think the first few games for Utah are going to be really, really, really key to figuring out how this defense is going to work this season.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
So the second game is Utah stays on the road, and they take a little trip to Colorado. The Battle of the Rockies. Sammy, what do you expect from that game?
Rumble in the Rockies. It's not a rivalry, in my opinion. Hot take. It's not. Utah has had their way with Colorado, and this year I think they have the same thing. Mel Tucker, not the best, or he's a good, but I don't know how good he's going to be with this Colorado team since he was brought in. So, sorry, it was blanking on his name, but their new coach, with him bringing him in, I don't know. They brought him in so late. How is he going to react to this team? How is the team going to react to him? And I just think that Utah is able to go into the Colorado game and win. Carl Darnell, sorry. Thank you for that. But I think that Utah goes into Colorado and gets the dub with that one as well.
Yeah, again, Sammy, I agree with you. this to me is not a rivalry like another game that Utah plays down south. It's big brother, little brother, and Utah is the big brother. Despite the changes in the rosters on both offense and defense, Colorado's going through with a lot of the same things and a new coaching staff. To me, Utah goes into Colorado and they come out with a 2 or 3 possession win over the Buffs.
For sure. Then Utah, finally, home game for Utah. Utah hosts Oregon State. I say this is a win, but I think it's a little bit closer than what some people would expect. Oregon State really started to gain momentum towards the end of last season. They almost became bowl eligible. And I just think it's a close game. Again, this is going to be the first big test for the Utah secondary, in my opinion. I think that this team, Oregon State, you never know what you're going to get. They have a lot of really good wide receivers. They have some running backs. They have a really good offense. So I think it's a close game, and it's a big test for the Utah secondary.
Yeah, I agree with you on the W. To me, like you said, that Oregon State started to pick up some steam at the end of last season, which is absolutely true. They almost became bowl eligible, but that to me, almost isn't doing it right. Mm-hmm. Oregon State was getting torched early on in the season last year, and I think at this point, we're 3 games in. It's a game at home. I think Utah really gets rolling with their offense, with those wide receivers, and I think they take advantage of a little bit of a weaker secondary, in my opinion, from Oregon State. And I think they would win this one by maybe 3 or even 4 possessions. And I think Utah's defense would step up to the plate there against Oregon State.
For sure. Then Utah hits the road yet again, going to Westwood, taking on UCLA. This is a win for me. DTR had a terrible game against Utah last year. He struggled so hard. And even though like it's a different Utah defense, I just think that he's gonna struggle against this Utah defense again. I think this is gonna be a consistent thing we see is DTR struggling against the Utah defensive line. They're just gonna overpower that UCLA offensive line and just get to him and make his life terrible.
Oh, I agree. I was at last year's game. That was a home game, a fantastic game to be at because Utah ran up the score and UCLA struggled to get into the end zone. I think they had 3 or 4 turnovers in the red zone against the Utah defense. That's a different Utah defense than we're seeing this year. But again, I don't see UCLA putting very many points on the board, maybe a touchdown, a couple field goals. But I think Utah, again, keeps that perfect season alive here, going for starting off 4-0 and just really taking it to UCLA.
Yeah. Then at home versus Arizona, I give this a W. I don't know what Arizona's ever doing, honestly. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. How are they going to look without JJ Taylor? That's a huge question mark for me. Plus, 2 of their their biggest stars on defense just announced they're transferring from the program. How is that going to change how this Arizona team looks? And I just think Utah's going to get the Wildcats yet again.
Arizona's lost their identity to me. I think it's a program that really needs to look itself in the mirror and figure out what the problems are. Change up how they're recruiting and find some new players because they have just been underperforming. When you're consistently beat by BYU, you've got some problems. When you can't fill your stadium up with more Wildcats than you can Cougars, you got a problem. So I agree with you, Sammy. This to me is a blowout. I don't even know if Arizona puts points on the boards against that Utah defense.
Mm-hmm. So next, Arizona State, probably the toughest test that the Utes will face up to this point in week 6. I have Utah coming out with an L on this one. Nothing good happens to Utah when they go to Tempe. Last time we were in Tempe, Tyler Huntley broke his collarbone. Not good. We lost. Also, there was the touchdown. That was not the touchdown with Solomon Enos. We all know the story. It should have been a touchdown. Nothing good happens to Utah in Tempe. I think that Jaden Daniels just torches that Utah defense. That young secondary just blows them apart. There's no way Utah comes out with a W in this one.
Yeah, Sam, I completely agree. Playing at ASU is never easy. Those fans are crazy. It's out in the desert, and Utah has a bad history against the Sun Devils. The overall head-to-head, I believe, is either 13-1 in favor of the Sun Devils or 13-2. Utah just, for whatever reason, cannot figure out, how to torch those guys out in the desert, and so. I think, like you said, that offense for ASU is just going to take advantage of the young secondary that Utah has and put up quite a few points. While I think the offense just struggles because Arizona State has had some time to grow, to learn, and they're looking definitely scary and someone that could potentially oust the Utes for the Pac-12 South.
Yeah. Then Utah would host Washington. You and I see differently on this one. I think Utah gets the W. Whole new coaching staff at UW. You lose Jacob Eason. You lose your running backs. You lose a couple wide receivers. Your secondary, kind of in the same position as Utah's. You lose key pieces of that. I think Utah can beat Washington for the second year in a row. Not only is it at Rice-Eccles Stadium, but I just think Utah can get this one from UW.
Yeah, I could see those things. But Washington has definitely created an incredible program over the last couple of years. They have taken, besides this last season where I was thrilled that Utah finally beat Washington. The past couple of years, Utah has struggled. Now, you do make some good points that the school is replacing their quarterback and their coaching staff, but there's a lot of good players that are still on that Washington roster. And again, Utah is not replacing their coaching staff. Hopefully, it's coaching Coach Witt until the end of times. But for me, with the new arrangement of defense and a new quarterback and running backs trying to fight for that, starting position, I think Washington gets back on track and bets the Utes.
So next, Utah goes to Cal. I have this as a W. Cal, yet again, another team like Oregon State that showed a lot of promise last year. I just think this is one that Utah can easily get a W from as well.
Yeah, I agree. Cal has not been great as of late. I think they have similar issues with Arizona. I don't know what their identity is, and to me, their recruiting has not been great. And I think again, the Utes, I think they roll Cal in this one.
So last two games for Utah, you have USC at home. This game always has huge implications for the Pac-12 South, and I think it will this season whenever the next season happens, but I think Utah does not come out on top. Keaton Slovis, insane. Amon-Ra St. Brown, insane. I just think, yet again, this is another situation where will the Utah secondary be able to keep up with this? Because last year with Matt Fink, we weren't able to. So will we be able to keep up with them? No. Again, I'm sorry, it's an L. I wish we could get over the hump of beating USC and finally being able to finish a game against them, if that makes sense.
That to me is the next great hump for Utah to get over. Before it was beating Washington, now it's beating USC. And I agree with you, Sammy. Despite it being at home, I think USC. I think it's close. I think it's another close battle. But yeah, with that quarterback that they've got against that young secondary, it's not a good equation. It doesn't look good, and Utah drops this one despite a close battle.
Yeah, and then finishing off the season, the rematch of the ages, Utah versus Oregon, actually was slated to be on the actual anniversary of us playing Oregon last year, which was not looking too good. I still think Utah comes out with an L. This game is a battle of the trenches. Utah prides themselves on having one of the best defensive lines in the Pac-12, and Oregon prides themselves on having one of the best offensive lines. It's a battle in the trenches, and I just think it's one that Utah just can't win. Also, Kayvon Thibodeau versus that Utah offensive line last year he destroyed it. So Utah just can't. Utah and Oregon, another game that Utah needs to be able to get over that hump and be able to come out on top in.
Yeah, I mean, Utah's gone back and forth with Oregon a little bit. 2 years ago, they did beat them at Rice-Eccles, but this last year, it was a struggle, an unfortunate struggle that surprised me, to be honest. But with the departure of Herbert to the NFL, I think the Utes, at this point in the season, you're 10 games in, you're playing at home. I think Coach Witt will have gotten that defense together, and I think the offense as well. Will be going again, another close one, but I believe Utah would come out on top against the Ducks, somewhere 35-31, 28-27, something just really close, but Utah over Oregon for me, and finishing the season 9-3. I
have Utah finishing this season with 3 losses and 7 wins, just 3 losses.
7-3. Excuse me.
Yeah, Utah just coming out with the losses against Arizona State, USC, and Oregon. So
for sure. All right, Sammy. Well, it'll be interesting to see